So once you're done, you've connected the dots appropriately, this is what your picture should look like. Okay? Alright, so when we're graphing on the coordinate plane, the reflection across the x-axis, the x value stays the same and the y values change sign. Okay, so x values stay the same, y values change sign. Reflection across the y-axis, the y values stay the same, and the x values change signs. So, for example, I graph A to -4 and then graph its reflection across the x-axis. Okay, so 2, -4 is right here. Because I'm going across the x-axis, the x value stays the same, so it's 2, and my y value changes. So -4 becomes 4, and I graph that point, so it's right there. Okay, and it's often written as A with this little tiny apostrophe, and it's called A prime. Okay. My second example says graph B -1.53, then graph its reflection across the y-axis. So -1.53 is right here. Okay. When I'm graphing across the y-axis, my y-coordinate stays the same, so it stays a 3, and my x-coordinate is my opposite. So the opposite of -1.5 is 1.5. When I graph that, I get B prime as 1.5, 3. All right, so here's a couple more try it problems. Go ahead, pause the video, try them out, and when you're done, we will go over the answers together. Okay, now that you've had a chance to try out the try it problems, let's go over the answers together. So, letter A says graph the point A across the x-axis and then state the coordinate point. So, here's my graph. I'm looking for letter A. Letter A is right here. So, letter A's coordinate point is 6, 5. Okay, and I'm graphing across the x-axis, which means my x stays the same and my y changes. So my point is going to be 6, -5. So I'm going to go over 6, down to -5, make a point, and that's going to be A prime. Okay. And then that's my coordinate point for letter A. Letter B says graph the point C across the y-axis and then state the coordinate point. So C is right there. This coordinate point is 2, 1. Went over 2, up 1. Graphing across the y-axis, so my x value changes. So my x value becomes -2. My y stays the same at 1. So a -2, up 1, that's going to be C prime. Okay. And then, of course, there's my coordinate point. Letter C says graph the point F across the x-axis and then state the coordinate plane. Okay. So F is right there. F is at -3, -2. Okay. I'm graphing across the x-axis, which means my x stays the same and my y changes. So that means my x stays the same. My y changes from -2 to +2. So I'm going to go ahead and graph that point on the number line. So that's -3, +2, and that's f prime. Letter D, graph the point E across the y-axis, and then state the coordinate point. So D is right there. Its point is -4, 3. We're going across the y-axis, which means my x is opposite, my y stays the same. So that means it's 4, 3, which is D prime. Letter E, graph the point B across the x-axis. So here's point B. Point B is 4, 6, going across the x. So that means x stays the same, y changes. So 4, -6. Come down here, 4. That's B prime. Okay, there's my coordinate point. F, graph the point H across the y-axis, then state the coordinate point. So here's H, which is 4, -4. I'm going across the y-axis, so my y stays the same, my x changes. So that's -4. So opposite of 4 is -4. -4, -4. So -4. -4 is right there. That's H prime. And again, that's my coordinate point. G, graph the point D across the x-axis, then state the coordinate point. So there's letter D, -4, 3. I'm going across the x-axis, so my x value stays the same. My y value changes. So I get -4, -3. So that's D prime. Okay. There's my point. Letter H, graph the point G across the y-axis. So there's G. G is 0, -4. Going across the y-axis, so my x value is opposite. Well, the opposite of 0 is 0, and the y value stays the same, so it's going to be the same point. So 0, -4. Okay. Letter I says graph the point I, -2, 3, and then reflect that point across the x-axis. What is the new coordinate point? So graph the point I, -2, 3, so there's I. Okay. And I want to graph it across the x-axis. So I want to do the opposite. It's going to be right here, so that's I prime. Okay, so because we graphed across the x value doesn't change, so that's -2. My y value changes, -3. And that is the end of lesson 8.